Oh, very good. Thank you. Jimmy, James Patrick.
No, keep guessing.
No, it's a very good Irish name. That's what I was supposed to bug it up with the Smith, though.
I did bugger it up with the Smith. I think that's a little bit Welsh, but anyway. All right, mate. Hey, we're going football crazy. Everyone, I got on the program on Tuesday, Mal, and I sounded like I knew what I was talking about with football. I don't, but have you been following the Matildas in their march through the World Cup?
I have been spasmodically, yes. Obviously, follow them and cheering for them, and hopefully they do well. I watched the game the other night. They were tremendous. They got the French team, and I watched the French side because I made a point of watching the French side, Jimmy, because I think they're playing them in the quarterfinals.
Yes.
And they had a pretty outstanding victory again to the stage now. They could be the favourites. So Matildas and the French side, I think will probably... I think that game might sort out who could win the World Cup.
Yeah. Well, if you look at that, Australia, France, England, Colombia, that's being played at a core stadium. What about this one? England v Colombia, Mal. It's at Homebush Stadium, they're calling it, a core stadium. It's nearly a sellout.
Yeah.
80,000 people.
Yeah. Well, it's been a huge success. There's no doubt about it. And just goes to show, the Australian sporting public love a big event, honestly, So this is global. It's a global event.
Yep.
Off the back of some I think our best athlete, well-known athlete, and Sam Kerr, who got 10 minutes the other night as well, which is great.
Yeah.
Back of her, there's so much support, certainly at the junior levels. And you look at all the crowds, so many families, so many young girls and boys there watching what is a very entertaining games. You watch the EPL and all those sort of, and it's 0-0, 0-0. You might get 1-0, you might get lucky, 1-1, but it's the women's game, and it's the same with rugby league. It's very entertaining to watch. There's a lot of ball movement. There's a lot of points scored. There's a lot of opportunities, that go Australia. I reckon it's just a great game to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Been fantastic. So that's going to be a huge audience again for the Matildas game against France, and that is on Saturday afternoon. So there's a lot to go through today. If you want to ask Mal a question, you can, 1300 01 1170, or get us on the text line, 0457 736 736. I'm going to throw a fullback scenario at Mal very shortly. Before we get to that, though, I'm going to link the Matildas at the World Cup to get your thoughts on the announcement from the International Rugby League around the calendar that's been developed, the World Cup being pushed back a year for 2026, but there's now some clarity for you as Kangaroos coach, Mal, about what's happening at the end of this season. How did you receive that calendar?
Oh, it was excellent. I knew they were going to do a try series, obviously, because of Tonga is going over to play against England, which is a great initiative. It's fantastic. And off the back of World Cup last year, I think they needed to have some sort of international progress in the Northern Hemisphere. But for us, we've got to play against the Samoans. We do that at Townsville. Then we have a bit of a break, and then we got the Kiwis down in Melbourne at Amy Stadium, and then they're playing a final. So obviously that's on points for and against, etc. In Hamilton in New Zealand, which is great. So there's a couple of test matches in New Zealand too. I think the Kiwis are playing Samoa at Eden Park in that second week when the Australian team has a bye. So it's really good. It's only 3 games if we go all the way.
Yep.
And I think that's just about enough. Obviously, off the back of such a long year, off the back of the World Cup last year, I just feel that they've done the right thing.
Is it interesting where those games are being played? Obviously, a huge appetite for the Kangaroos up in Townsville with that brand new stadium there. Then, of course, we know there's a strong Kiwi contingent down in Melbourne, and that's a great stadium as well, Amy Park. And then the final, no game in Brisbane, no game in Sydney. That seems extraordinary, Mal.
Well, I think again, in my own personal opinion, that the international games, the test matches, I think is a vehicle to showcase our game in different parts of Australia. Certainly in New Zealand, they've got Obviously, New Zealanders are playing the Samoans in New Zealand, which is great. That's at Eden Park. They'll get capacity crowd there.
Yes.
I reckon we'll get a capacity crowd up in Townsville, and I reckon we'll get a capacity crowd down in Amy. So no, I think that's what it's all about. It's all around showcasing what our best players. It's like Origin, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we have one in Queensland, one in New South Wales. I think I'm in favour of that, but one game where they take it elsewhere to just to get some people who follow the game, just give them an opportunity to go watch it live, at their own hometown. I think that's a great initiative. And I just think in the international game, we're going to go to Vegas, aren't we, by the looks of things? So we're going to showcase the game over there. And I feel that all aspects, so whether it's clubland, whether it's Origin, whether it's international, that we utilise particularly the international game to, globally enhance it, lift the profile. You take it places where we haven't been before.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. Are you, just out of interest, are you available to go to Vegas if asked, Mel?
Oh, I'll probably go anyway. it's not about the footy, it's just about going to Vegas, isn't it, really?
Exactly. Well, if anyone asks, I'm available.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Just to let you know.
Well, SEN, we'll be a throwdown. We'll throw over. With
Oh,
Mel and Jimmy.
Yes. The throw down under.
Yeah. Down under, that's it. The throw down under.
The throw down under coming to you live from Caesar's Palace. That sounds good. That sounds good.
Yeah, well, that's about 30 or 40 years ago, Caesar's Palace, wasn't it?
So is it? We've moved on, have we?
More modern
okay.
facility.
Showing my age there. Before we get to this, I want to get your thoughts on the back of some audio from Gus Gould. But Rugby League Players Association and the NRL met yesterday, meeting again today. Very positive was the way it was described by Peter Volandis. Similar sounds coming out of the RLPA. What was your thoughts on that? And that's obviously, again, having a huge impact on the international game.
It is, yeah. So the sooner we get that done, the better. And, I hear the same thing. I thought it was very, very positive. It shouldn't. And when we talk about the international space, we are looking at finding a bit more next week as well. So I think on the back of the CBA getting complete, obviously understanding the payment system for all the players are going to play in the international program, then the players' availability, obviously off the back of that as well. Well, then we can actually get on to planning our season. So it's all happening quickly, which is great because we need the quicker we want it to happen, obviously the better we can plan and make sure we get our team sorted out. So I believe hopefully that we'll know better understanding next week.
Okay, yeah, right. Next week we'll get more understanding around that. Okay, all right. Now, this was Phil Gould on his podcast, 6 Tackles with Gus.
I think that the Australian team at the end of the year would be looking for players that were deep into the finals and playing regularly rather than having a 6 or 8 week break before they go into representative football. I think James would be looking forward to a break this off-season. I'm not saying he's not a great player, but he was under pressure to hold his spot for the New South Wales side this year. It's time to move on.
Okay, now, final statement, it's time to move on. I'm going to present this scenario to you, Mal, and you let me know what you're thinking. James Tedesco doesn't make the finals with the Roosters, so would not have played 6 weeks before that first game against Samoa in Townsville. Kalen Ponga drags the Newcastle Knights into the second week of the finals on the back of some outstanding individual performances, and we know that he can play at fullback, 6 and 14. Reece Walsh takes the Brisbane Broncos into the grand final, and he's been sublime throughout the course of the final series, and of course we know he had a great State of Origin series as well. And Dylan Edwards, congratulations to the Penrith Panthers. They won the grand final again, and he's gone back-to-back as the Clive Churchill medalist. Ryan Pappenhausen had a magnificent final series at fullback for the Melbourne Storm as well. Who's your Australian fullback, Mel?
Can you ask that question again? Go through that again. I didn't quite get... Oh, please. Oh, dear. Well, the whole... I just did one. The whole backline's full of fullbacks. So, Tedesco's fullback. You put Edwards and Pappenhausen on the wing. You've got Mitchell and Walsh in the centres, and you got Ponga in Drinkwater at 7 and 6. How's that sound? How's that sound?
No, that's perfect.
That sort of covers all bases, doesn't it?
Oh, hang on. I think that's Daly Cherry Evans that's ringing you right now. Nathan Cleary's ringing you right now.
Well, everyone's got an opinion,
Yeah.
But you look at the James Tedesco situation. I know that Teddy wants to play. He wants to play the international program. And I think that's fantastic because, hey, you're only on this earth once upon a time. If you're good enough and you're playing well enough and you're the captain of the Aussie team, you want to keep that going. If the Roosters don't make it, they finish so early September, that gives him 4 weeks rest, Jimmy. So I see that as a benefit. Now,
Right.
I know for a fact that Teddy will turn up for international series. We got a PM's game, so there's a game there that he could play in, and that would prepare him for the international series. So if players don't make the finals, it's just a great opportunity to rest them. And then the other part about resting them, through that month of September, is they get back with their clubs a lot sooner than anticipated. So if they went through the finals, they wouldn't be back at their clubs till January. So
Right.
if you finish by the beginning of September, it's 8 or 9 weeks for players like that. And they get 4 weeks off through September. All of a sudden, we finish the final of the Tri Series in early November, and they're back training before Christmas.
Yeah.
So it works out. It works out really well, and that's the way I do things. With players, it's such a hard, arduous year, and off the back of World Cup, as I guess Gus is alluding to, and fatigue does cut in. I think fresher the player, who don't make the 8, I think they are more of an asset than actually nursing the players that have played right through into the finals.
Yeah.
Go straight into it. Obviously, they're battle hardened, but there's a lot more maintenance and a lot more you have to do to maintain their fitness to get them through the series. The series where you got the fresher guys, missing the 8.
Yeah. Well, there are a heap of different scenarios. Like I could have, the Roosters scrape into the 8 on the back of an outstanding James Tedesco performance in round 27 against the Rabbitohs, and they beat the Newcastle Knights in the first week of the final. So that's Kalen out, and that's Latrell Mitchell out, and then there are different scenarios, but
there is. But I think that break can be of benefit as well. So everyone, Gus mentions, he does need a break. Well, he does need a break. Obviously, they all need a break. All the players that have played in the World Cup definitely need a break. And that's not just the Aussies. That's the Kiwis, the Samoans, the Tongans, everyone, because it was such an arduous year last year. Then we get into this year where we had a pre-season. Everything started the 1st of March. We've had 27 rounds, straight into a final, straight into an international series. So I said it yesterday, we've got to seriously look at the workload of the players and have a look at the season and how it all is structured and have a bit of empathy. Off a World Cup as an example, we've got to have a look at, maybe you only play 1 or 2 games at the end of the year, or you play 1 game, or at some stage maybe we just have a break from international football after a World Cup. But at the moment it is what it is, and if Teddy wants to play, and he's the incumbent fullback and he's the captain of the footy team, I've got no problems being loyal to him because he hasn't let us down yet.
Yeah. So here's the other part about that too, and it's an interesting point that you make mention there, Mal, and I would love to know what it was like for you in the 80s, but I remember what it was like in the 90s. Once you played that last game, you basically did nothing until you came back for pre-season training, whereas now my understanding is that all these players just tick over anyway with their training because they're far more aware of how difficult it is to get back into shape as opposed rather than stay in shape. Is that fair comment?
No, that's a fair comment, but that's the way that's the norm now, though.
Yeah.
When I was growing up and when you were growing up, there was a normal way of doing things, and we didn't know any different. But I still know that in my era, there's still players continually training. I kept on doing a little bit. You keep turning yourself over. I learnt that right when I was a young kid. Playing in Brisbane, for Brisbane South when I was 20-year-old. I had a pretty big 21st off season. Yeah. So and I come back and I was struggling. I was at the back of the forwards. I wasn't the back of the backs. I was at the back of the forwards.
Yes.
Trying to work my way back into the back into match fitness. So I never let that happen again. So you soon learn. You learn from your mistakes.
Yep.
But the modern player, honestly, they look after themselves so well these days. It's I think we use a window of 3 weeks. So we say, we just want you to rest for 3 weeks.
Right.
Don't do anything. If you have to, you feel yourself guilty. Maybe go do a little run or whatever the case may be. But after 3 weeks, then you start to train again in preparation. It just gives you. It's amazing how much the pains and the aches and the fatigue goes away if you just give yourself a break for at least 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously a lot of science around that in this day and age too. So the other part that makes me want to ask you the question: who is the player? I've heard incredible stories about Darren Lockyer coming back to training and winning the beep test up there at the Brisbane Broncos. Who is the player that could come back to a pre-season and be near enough to peak fitness straight away that you can recall?
Well, the older the player, the better the peak or the quickness they get back to peak fitness. So it's about that, that training regime they've had over a long period of time. Darren, it was a greyhound, Darren.
Yeah.
He didn't carry much body fat at all, but he always looked after himself. He was one of those players that, he'd have a good off-season, loved a beer and loved a good time, there's no doubt, but he'd look after himself, he'd eat all the right food, he'd make sure he'd do everything he possibly can.
Yeah, or I think we might have just lost Mal. I think he's getting a phone call from someone. It's probably his mum, I'd say.
So maintain that fitness. Are you there, mate?
Yeah,
Sorry.
was that mum ringing you again?
Yeah.
Oh, I think
that's my wife. It's actually wedding anniversary today, Jimmy.
So,
you there?
Yeah. I'll tell you what we'll do, Mal. We'll go to a break because it's time to go to a break anyway, and we'll resort this out. So hang on. We might have uncovered something here.